Hello. It's Colin and Rachel. Welcome back to another chat with Profit Playbook. Today we have a couple of things. We want to talk about CoachCon, which if you don't know what CoachCon is, you will soon. It's happening in 2 weeks. Talk about what we're excited about there. If you're going, you should come say hi. And then we're gonna talk about my background a little bit. It sounds so strange. But we've done many a talk
Right.
about Collins. And you're probably like, who is this Rachel person? What's her background? So it's time. It's time.
It's time, all right.
Yeah. Okay, but first, Coach Con. So, Colin, you want to talk about what strategic coach is for anyone who is unfamiliar?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Strategic Coach was started by Dan Sullivan, I think, 30, little over 30 years ago. And the basic idea originally was he was just a business coach, like any type of business coach. He was working with his clients on, certain challenges they were going through. And then from my understanding, when it really all changed was within the first few years, he started building out like frameworks and concepts. It became more about teaching and giving them exercises to work through and less about just responding to whatever their current challenge was in the business. Interestingly, your current challenges always find their way into your exercises and work that you do. And so as Dan Sullivan, worked on that and that became more of the model, it became a classroom group model. And so now they have session rooms that are full-time session rooms in LA, in Chicago, in Toronto, which is where it started, and I believe in London. And so with that, basically you've got entrepreneurs coming together. Usually there's 30 or 40 people in a class. And what's amazing is not only are you going through the kind of work and the lesson, if you will, in terms of the exercise, but you're meeting a bunch of other entrepreneurs, sometimes seeing the ones you saw at the last session. And so you're doing breakouts to discuss your insights that you just created and learning from each other. And it's a great collaborative environment. And so that's kind of the standard strategic coach.
Mhm.
CoachCon is their very first conference that they've put together, which is amazing because one of the limitations of Coach is that you go through strategic coach and you've got kind of your cohort and there's a little bit of crossover for people making up sessions and missing sessions, but there's never been a time where they've tried to bring together everybody who's in strategic coach at one time in one place to really meet each other. And
Mhm.
so I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, it's the first ever strategic coach conference, which has quite the fun name of Coach Con. It's a great name.
That's
They
right.
did great.
Yep.
And the really surreal thing that we're very excited about is that we're a sponsor. We get to be a sponsor at their first annual Coach Con. So
That's
we'll
right.
be we'll
Yeah.
have a booth. You'll see us throughout the conference. If you're going, come say hi, please. I think we'll be the first or second booth when you come up the stairs. And we'd love to meet people. I know Colin knows a lot of coach members, and we're excited to meet in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm excited for you to meet more coach people because as we've talked about, kind of offline, some of the things about coach people are so cool is that, these are entrepreneurs. I kind of say that like the second part of your entrepreneurial journey begins when you awaken to the fact that you're not good at everything and you can admit to everyone that you don't want to do everything within a company. And so when you start down that path, that's when getting better really starts to occur. You start to build a more talented team. You start to do that more introspection. And so people who are in coach are on that journey. Like they'll stand up and be like, I hate everything I'm doing right now. How do I fix it? And everybody's like, okay, what are you working on? And so it's an amazing, people are very vulnerable. People talk very openly about the challenges that they're facing, what's working, what's not. So coach people are amazing and I'm the entrepreneurs. And so I'm really, really excited. We were just at EOS. There's a ton of crossover between people who, I was telling you, if you asked a random group of 30 or 40 members of coach, like who in here is running on EOS? I guarantee you like 90% of the hands would go up because people recognize EOS as a framework to engage the team and the rest of the company to really help drive the results. Because what a coach entrepreneur wants is a company that's amazing, that's independent of them. Like,
Mhm.
I show up and add value, and people appreciate what I'm doing there, and they see me for what I'm trying to accomplish. But I'm not getting in their way of building a good company that doesn't depend on one person being at the center of it all. So
That's
it's a
great.
really, I mean, it's a really great group of people.
Yeah, and Coach does things well. And so they have quite the lineup of keynote speakers coming in. And I know you know more of these than I do. The one that I'm most excited about is Chris Voss, the author of Never Split the Difference. He was an FBI negotiator, just really good thoughts on how to negotiate, how to collaborate with people. Like, top notch. I know I've read his books. I know a lot of people who have read his books. And so he's going to be, I think, on day one keynote,
That's right. Yeah.
the end of the day.
Yeah. I think they've got some opening remarks, and then he's like the first big keynote of the morning. But yeah. And he, like you said, when I talk to other entrepreneurs and business people, that book comes up for the last like 3 years. You hear about that book over and over and over again. And everybody I've talked to is like, it's a must read. You absolutely have to. And if you haven't read it or don't know anything about Chris Voss, you might think that it's all about like bravado, and you might misinterpret what being an FBI negotiator, which is what he did for a long time, what that's really about. What it's really about is, I think, what he would call like tactical empathy. So it's really about like making sure the other person feels heard, making sure that they, feel like they've gotten their point across, that they're being listened to. And then it's about, essentially making clear to them and trying to guide the conversation towards something that actually is workable. Because a lot of times, I'm sure they're just asking for the world, things that are impossible. And there's no way you can give them that. And if you tell them you will and then don't, it's like worse than if you just said no. So anyway, it's a really, really good book. People have to read that book if you haven't read it.
Right. And then, so Dan Sullivan is also on day one. You've talked a little bit
Yep. The
about
founder
him.
of Strategic Coach.
Yep.
Yep.
And then day two, Joe Polish. It's Polish, right?
Yep.
Joe
Polish.
Polish and Kathy Ireland. These ones you're more familiar with than I am.
Yeah, well, so Kathy Ireland, shot to fame in like the 80s as like a SI swimsuit model, right? And so she was like maybe the most famous model in the world. I mean, like super famous. And I'm a little older than you, so I have more of a recollection of this than you do, Rachel. but but she was super famous. And then next thing you know, it's like, well, Kathy Ireland's a business lady. Kathy Ireland is a titan of business. So we were looking this up before the call. In 2021 alone, her company did over 3 billion in retail sales.
With a
Like,
B?
she is with a B, she is a powerhouse. So she has built, and she was one of the first people to do, I think it was with like Kmart, or I think it was Kmart maybe. But anyway, she basically did like a branding, it's like we've now seen Martha Stewart do it and all these other people do it. She started doing that back in the early 90s, before that concept was really well known. And so she built, through like home furnishing and all kinds of different products, built a absolute powerhouse business career. So she might be a billionaire. I don't know. She is, insanely successful. And so it's like you said, Coach does things right. When you walk into a Coach session room, everything is pristine. There's typically books, multiple books, many times, like given to the person for attending. They've got every type of pen and highlighter and water, and then there's like a fully stocked fridge with every type of drink you could want. And amazing like espresso machines making awesome coffee. It's like everything is super, super first class. And so zero surprise for me when it's like Kathy Ireland. I don't even know how you book somebody like that. Like, she doesn't need money to go do speaking tour. You get her, you get Chris Voss, and then Joe Polish. So Joe Polish created the Genius Network, which is widely considered, I think, the premier marketing, networking, and mastermind series of events. And it kind of functions a little bit like Strategic Coach, where you go quarterly. But those are, some of the best marketers in the world are still members of the Genius Network and part of Joe Polish's deal. So it's absolute first class set of speakers.
So if you've been on the fence about whether or not you want to go, this is your sign that you should probably go. They've got top
Yeah,
notch.
and it's funny because we saw them at EOS,
You did.
and one of the things that some of the coach people were telling me is like, oh man, well, some of our clients are just very last minute people. They're like, they've had people tell them that they booked hotels, but have yet to tell them they're coming. And so I was telling them, I'm like, you guys are like, it's like planning a wedding where a bunch of people are planning to crash, and they're going to crash, but it's like, I can't make table arrangements until they tell me they're coming.
Yeah.
So
And
anyway,
it should be
yeah,
more,
so it's not too late.
yeah, and it should be more intimate than if you went to EOS. There was over 2,000 people there. That was a massive conference. This, I think, a few hundred, like 2, 3,
Yes. Yeah.
400,
It's going to be
something like
like
that.
400, I think is what they're.
And so we might have a better chance of actually meeting a lot more people and having, real conversations with people, which is what I get excited about. I'm also thrilled to be able to go because I'm not a member of Strategic Coach, but because we're a sponsor, I get to go and meet all these people and see these really cool keynotes. So I feel very lucky there.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
And hey, if you're
Okay,
there, if
well,
you're going to be there, let us know to watch out for you, and we want to meet you.
yeah, absolutely. That as I've told you, I mean, I have coach friends from all over the country now who in working with FinElevate and all the things we've been working on, you've heard me call on those relationships and contact people and ask for advice. It is such a giving, sharing, open community that it's going to be great for you to be part of that. And so anybody, yeah, if you happen to be there, if you see this, let us know. We'd love to meet, even if it's just to shake a hand and meet a new person. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and we didn't say actually the dates, May 8th and 9th. The
And
Wednesday,
it's in
Thursday.
Nashville.
We'll be there
That's right.
starting the 7th. And so if you get there on Tuesday, come say hi. And it's in Nashville. Yeah, so those are some of the details that I suppose we didn't share before.
That's right. Yeah. We'll fix it later. We'll fix it in editing. Okay, so now, very exciting time on our very first live stream, very first show that we did. We talked a little bit about my background, and I said, wait a minute, at some point, I'm like, we're going to have to put you on the hot seat at some point. So today is that day. I'm very excited. Rachel's having to face the awkwardness of talking about herself that I've had to get over in the past few months.
It's everyone's favorite.
And it is. So, okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, Rachel is the director of operations at FinElevate. And when I first started FinElevate, I wrote a vivid vision, just kind of description of the business. And then I was like, I need to find the right person to complement my skill set to bring this to life. Somebody who could really like own the day-to-day of the business and really be that operator, integrator, depending on what your terminology is in the business. And fortunately for me, very fortunately, through a mutual connection, was introduced to Rachel. And so we talked and it ended up being a great fit. And it sounded like, at least, hopefully still true, fit what she was wanting to do. And so that was kind of where the story started. But I'm interested today to hear a little bit about what happened before 2023 when that occurred. And a couple things about Rachel. So Rachel is, she's very passionate and really, really good with our team. That was an area of business that I wasn't as strong. And so I was looking for somebody who was really that like steady hand leader of the team, process, and all the things that if done wrong can feel very cold, but if done well, feel very like nurturing for the team. And so that's one of your great strengths.
Nice way to think about that. Like people process is something that can feel cold if done wrong, but it can be really warm. I've never thought about it that way. I like that a lot.
I've never either. I just said that, but it's very true. No, and I think from my background of struggling with it, like that's one of the things I ran into is like it feeling like we're just going through some process here, but because I'm so much more task focused and kind of like future focused, it feels like to people, there's not that nurturing element. So I'm interested to hear what shaped your background there. And then the other thing, Rachel's really, really good at, obviously the process piece we just touched on, but like data and thinking about like how these different elements converge. So you're really passionate about numbers, which makes great sense in Finelevate, but also about like making data backed decisions, trying to take things, make them like quantitative to whatever extent possible. And again, I would also say that doesn't necessarily fit with the team nurturing part we just
Yeah.
described. Like you could see somebody being very analytical, maybe not good at that.
Mm-hmm.
So starting in your background, like even going back to when you were in school, like what do you feel like was some of the journey points that started you down the path for those traits?
Well, first of all, I had extremely relevant degrees of anthropology and history in
That's
my
right.
undergrad. Didn't know what I was going to do with that. That's the beauty of a liberal arts college, where you just kind of get to dabble
Yep.
in a lot of things. I like to say that my liberal arts degree taught me how to learn and be inquisitive, and that is what's kept me going and served me very well in my career. Not necessarily exactly what I learned in college, because anthropology and history not super relevant to like Finelevate financial services
To
or
much of
operations.
anything, honestly. That's funny.
Yeah. So after college, I did some time in nonprofit. So I did AmeriCorps Vista volunteering with Habitat for Humanity. That's actually how I met my husband. Very thankful for that year. And then that was family services. So even right out of college, I got into very technical things. I was responsible for helping the various affiliates around Minnesota understand who to build houses for Habitat for Humanity. So there's a lot of legal
Ooh.
involved in there. And you had to follow
Project management,
project management. I got to work with a lot of different
which,
people, and
yeah.
especially like high level people, executive directors is who I was primarily working with, which was intimidating as a fresh out of college kid, but it was fun. I love working with a lot of different people. I learned that pretty quick, and learning a lot of the technical aspects, which most people find boring. Like, how do we evaluate a credit score?
Yeah.
How do we evaluate a criminal background? So that was fun. From there I moved to Girl Scouts. We worked at a local Girl Scouts council in Minnesota. Um, and that's where I learned
Did
my
everyone, I have a question for you.
yes.
Did everyone ask you for the cookies when you were in that job?
My most common
Were they like,
question was, do
you
they
must
give
have a
you
hookup?
free cookies? Which, yeah, sometimes they did. Not all the time.
Okay. All right.
But for the
Interesting.
opening of cookie season, they would at least they did this once. They lined up all of the different cookies so we could have a sampling on the start of cookie season. I was like, yes, this is beautiful. I love this. Thank you.
I just picture like you walk into office one day and there's like a cookie buffet all the time. Like
Not all the time, but
maybe that's my
sometimes.
dream version. Okay. I love that. Nice.
Yeah, I loved my
So
time
Girl
at Girl
Scout.
Scouts. Let me tell you, it was a lot of like strong, powerful women working there. Like our whole leadership team was women, which isn't all that common in for-profit business. And I got to learn from a lot of them. So I found my way into like a budgeting and analytics kind of role there. This is where I got introduced to like Excel and pivot tables and formulas, and it was love at first sight basically. But
That you're going to lose a lot of people. A lot of people in this video just, somebody just drove off the road if they were listening to
if
this.
you hate Excel, great. Hand it over to people like me. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
But one of the biggest projects is I moved over into this budgeting role, and I was supposed to be like just a small assistant in their annual budgeting process. And then my boss, who was supposed to take a much bigger role, was out on maternity leave for the 3 months of time where the budgeting had to be done. So I got to work with the COO. Her name is Jen Thorson. Love Jen Thorson. Um, she was going to be running for the whole operations department, which was 12 different departments. It was like 3/4 of the entire organization budget. And so she pulled me along and said, well, Rachel, we don't have the person that we normally would. Are you willing to step up and try this out with me? And it was her first time doing it too, as the COO. So we were changing the process out. And it was one of the critical points in my career where I said, I've never done budgeting before. I don't know what I'm doing, but sure, I'll try it. And I love projects like that. This is how I learned that I love trying something completely out of my comfort zone. I also
Mm.
got to work with the heads of department or all those 12 departments and make a process simpler that they had been kind of annoyed by in the past, because usually they had just been talking with the finance people. And I love finance people, but
Ooh.
they can be a little dry. And for,
So this
yes, Colin.
I just want to draw a parallel because this is our Finelevate experience, is people who have had a bad taste in their mouth with kind of the finance, the very dry finance people they've experienced. Maybe there's a process that they value the outcome of, or they know the significance of it. They really don't want to have any part of it. And so this is really fascinating because I've seen you time and time again dive into those kind of things, get people comfortable with what it's going to take. And then really, once you've got somebody who's fun to interact with and they're taking the lead in this, it's like, oh, this really isn't so bad.
It just
So
got better.
that's interesting. I can see that how that planted the seed, because I've seen that in you like time and time again. And that's why, I mean, our clients, we have one, Tim, I'm not going to say too many details about him, call Tim out, but Tim is like, I've never been so excited to talk to finance people. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm still excited about the last conversation we had, and like I'm not dreading this call, and like I just expect to dread this type of call. So interesting to hear some of where that
Yeah.
that originated.
It's fun. I love chatting with different people. And throughout my career, I've usually made friends with finance people, IT people, HR, which are very different groups of people, but I like bringing them together. So because I understand the numbers and I understand Excel, and so I can talk with the finance people and understand their language. But then when you're working with someone in who builds programs for Girl Scouts, they're not going to understand that language the same way. And that's where I love bridging that gap and almost being the interpreter.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so that's what I did with the Girl Scouts budgeting is we created the tools. The tools that finance had created were very complicated, very formula heavy and whatnot. We were like, okay, for you, department head that needs to create a budget, we're just going to have a conversation about what your priorities are. I will take that, form it into some kind of spreadsheet that will work with for accounting, and you sign off on it. Much better of a process.
Wow. That's huge. You made a lot of friends. I'm sure you were very popular very quick.
I got to know everyone. I'm a strong extrovert,
Yeah.
and so I basically knew everyone in the organization, and I love that. I mean, it wasn't a huge organization. I think there was about maybe 150. It was less than 200 people. But
Yeah.
like I got to feel like I knew everyone's name, which is very rewarding for me as an extrovert.
Sure.
So that was a critical moment in my career, understanding that that is a good spot for me. The combination of the technical, numerical, and people. That's where I like to work.
Mm.
From there,
And and one of your passions is leading the team,
yep.
right? So that's a great case. That's a great example of where you kind of were working within the team. You were a member of the team. What about the passion for, the people who report to you? And because again, what I see is a lot of nurturing and really being thoughtful about the impact on them of what the work is, but also like the bigger picture of work is just a portion of their life. And like you really you care about the whole thing. So any idea where that came from, or is that just more your nature, your good Minnesota roots?
Maybe. I don't know exactly where that came from, to be honest with you. So I had a longer time period until I got to the point where I was managing people. That happened at my next job, which
Mhm.
was a marketing agency in Minnesota. Um, and I kind of always had this thought that, like, man, I love to advocate for people and I love to take
Mm.
care of other people and make sure that their needs are met. And it wasn't until I was able to have direct reports that I was able to live that out. And that was kind of a source of tension. I don't know if I've even said this to you, Colin, at past jobs where I love advocating for other people, but if you don't have your own team, I didn't have a place for that energy to go.
That's
And so it caused a
funny.
couple of some tense conversations at past jobs. I've since reflected, like, hey, maybe that's a sign. If you're seeing someone who's kind of causing some problems on the team, maybe they need another place to put that energy. Maybe they are really a manager in the making and they just aren't able to have a space for that energy yet. So I'm reflecting on that. Um, but it became so much better now that I am able to have a team, because my instinct is to watch out for other people, advocate for them, protect them, and allow them to have their full humanness in their position. Something I'm so passionate about. This is what I nerd out about with anyone who is also in this position. Like, my sister is also a manager of people. We talk, I don't know, a couple times a month, and usually it's about what's going on your team right now. Like, what are your struggles? It's so funny. But I just care so deeply that the if you're going to work for a company, you're dedicating a lot of your time and energy towards that company, and that you should feel similarly respected and protected from your company back. And that, unfortunately, is not what a lot of
Mm.
people have experienced. And that's one of the things that drew me
Wow.
to Colin and Finelevate, is that I felt like I was going to be able to build that culture here. And I like to think that I have, or I'm always striving
Yeah.
to do that better. But that was something that was critical in my next position when I was looking for a switch last time, is that I want to build a place that treats people right.
Mm. And you found me, who said, "This is what I would love to have, but you can't trust me to build it. But I'll stay out of the way, I swear." So that's amazing. Well, great. Well, thank you for the background, and I know, from my perspective, having heard from members of our team be like, "Oh my gosh, this is the real deal." Like, that is such a fulfilling thing to me. Having, been a CEO for a long time, run, different companies, and it felt like I've been in good places with culture and team, and then struggle places with culture and team, and trying to reflect back on, what causes those. But nothing is more fulfilling than when somebody says, "I was excited to get on your team because of the culture you talked about, and it's even better now that I'm here and it's real, and it's even better than I thought." Like, that's amazing. So
We just
kudos to
recently
you for that.
had someone say that, like, almost verbatim, and I was like, "Oh, that's so rewarding. Thank you."
Yeah.
Oh, I could
Well, and I
do
think
an
it shines through.
I could do an entire podcast about how to lead people, how to share or give extreme ownership, and how to track and set expectations. Like, this is what I love talking about all day, every
I
day.
think
And so I could do an entire podcast on that. But if it's something that's interesting to
I think you
you,
will.
hit me up because I would love to chat with you about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, perfect. Well, thanks for being on the hot seat today. And I know we've got to run, but
Yeah.
yeah. And it, again, going back to remind everybody, look us up at Coach Con.
Yes.
If you're watching this, listening to this, look us up at Coach Con. Come out and meet us, meet Rachel. You can sit at her feet and learn about how to manage an amazing team. And And otherwise, yeah, I'm excited for the next couple weeks.
Nice to see you all. Bye.